Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I know you could be out frolicking this summer, doing all sorts of things, but you probably are here because you see the need to learn how to be a confident interviewer, right? So I'll just do a quick introduction. My name is Linda Evans. I work in career services as one of the assistant directors. I work specifically with the STEM majors and the pre-health students. So whatever your major is, if you're going into a health profession, then excuse me, then you meet with me. So I'm excited to talk about interviewing today. Interviewing is a really dynamic skill, part of your job search, obviously, but a little less easy to nail down because you have like resume formats, cover letter, templates, right? But interviewing, it really depends on many moving factors. So I'm going to cover as many as I can. Feel free to put in any questions. Michelle McWilliams from Career Services, my colleague, is here to help manage the chat box. So Michelle can, flag me when there's any questions that come in. But otherwise, let's get started. Okay, I have interspersed a lot of memes into this presentation because I think interviewing is one of those really nerve-wracking things that needs some humor to lighten it up. So here's the first one. I'll just let you read it on your own, right? We all feel desperate when we go into an interview, but hopefully you'll feel a little less desperate, more prepared after this presentation. One of the most important things to do for interviewing is to prepare. Like, don't go in cold, right? It's something that you can't just think, I'm gonna wing it, because you'll likely stumble, you'll likely get really frazzled, you'll likely regret not preparing. So I want to help you prevent any regrets you will have about not preparing by showing you how to prepare, what to prepare for. So starting with some basics, there are three main arrangements of interviewing. There's the one-on-one, right? Just like you and another person. So the top represents like the interviewees and the bottom represents interviewers, although you could totally flip it. But it could be one-on-one, it could be you and several interviewers. It could be several of you interviewees and several interviewers. So I like to call this like a panel interview where you're interviewed by a panel. And then this one might be like a group interview where it's like a group of interviewers with a group of interviewees. Here's another meme for you. I'm sure you're all familiar with IKEA, right? I personally really like putting together IKEA furniture. For some reason, it's very satisfying to me, but it can be stressful. So that leads us into interviewing types. There's the question format, which is really the most common, right? That's what you're expecting when you go into interview, is they ask questions, you answer questions. You get to ask questions, they answer questions. That's the most common for sure, but there are also presentations. Sometimes if your job requires public speaking, like being a TA, maybe if you lead study groups, or if you are interviewing for like a business where you'll be presenting your work regularly, they might ask you to prepare a presentation, which includes slides. So it's not just you speaking, it's the visual communication aspects as well. And then there's the hands-on, which is like the IKEA meme. They might ask you to do something in the interview and then they watch you. So I've interviewed for a camp counselor job where they wanted to see us in doing teamwork, like live. So they had us like build Legos together and they watched us. So that was like a hands-on interview. So there might be something like that. Or if you're going into a job where they have to like drive a certain vehicle, use a certain equipment, perform certain procedures or routines. And then case studies are kind of hands-on, except it's more in your brain. So they give you like a specific situation, problem to solve, and then you get time to put together a solution. And this could be like homework, like they might give you a case study and say, okay, you have 3 days, and it might be combined with a presentation, like come back and give us your solution. Or it could be in the interview itself, like they give you a room, put you in a room and give you half an hour to prepare your solution presentation. This is more common in business consulting jobs. So not every kind of interview, right? And then the rare meal interview, if it's for like a really fancy employer, they might, and you're working with clients, right? So they want to see how you conduct yourself professionally with food in front of you and clients in front of you. You can still talk professionally, not get food all over yourself, and not order too much, not eat too much, not get drunk. That I haven't personally been in a meal interview, but I know that they can happen. So these are the 5 main types, but mostly you're probably thinking about preparing for questions in interview. Here's another meme. I love this one. I am not endorsing this, okay? Do not hack into any systems and put yourself on the schedule. I just think this is funny. Okay, so let's share some general rules for virtual interviews, which is the most common. You're always going to start with a virtual interview like 99% of the time. Your first interview will likely not be in person live, right? So it could be on the phone, right? That's they might call it a screening interview. So they just want to see if you're a real person, if you are intelligent, if you can talk in complete sentences. So that's usually a very quick, like 10, 15-minute conversation. And then there are recorded interviews. HireVue, if you've heard of that, that's a popular company that where employers can post questions, and then you get a time limit to record your answer, and usually get like at least 2 tries. So it's a time thing. It can be very nerve-wracking. It requires a lot of like thinking in the moment and being present, thinking on your feet. And then there's like the live video interview. So like Zoom, you know, you're talking to someone synchronously. And I think those are a little easier than the asynchronous recorded interviews, but you have to be prepared for any of these formats. So when you're preparing, make sure you have a quiet room. This might be harder for some people if you have roommates, if you have pets, right? If you live in the dorms, apartments, there's people nearby. Do your best to warn everyone, to politely ask them to keep, you know, their volumes down. If you can reserve a room on campus, do that, or reserve some conference room at your apartment, then try to do that. And if there's noise, like if there's a motorcycle outside or construction or, you know, a siren that goes by, don't panic, because that's totally out of your control, right? So just apologize quickly to the interviewer and move on, like don't dwell on it, but try to control everything you can, you know, to prevent noise disruption. And then internet and phone connection, very important. Do your best to find the best internet connecting spot, Wi-Fi, you know, get an Ethernet cord if you need to, but try to avoid those disruptions. And then this is really important, have the light source in front of your face. So not behind you, not to the side of you, because that creates a lot of shadows and it's hard to really see who you are. So right now, like those who are on camera, your lighting looks pretty good, all of you that I can see so far. And I purposely have I placed my desk so my window is in front of me, so you can see I'm pretty well lit. If I turn this way, it's not as bad because it's pretty bright outside. But you know, you want to have a good light source in front of you. You don't have to buy a fancy light or the ring light or anything. Just work with what you have. And then have the camera at eye level. I've been on the interviewer side, and a lot of candidates are not conscious of this, and they have, you know, like the camera down here and it just looks really awkward, or they have it like up here and you can like barely see them. So do your best to like stack some books. If you have a standing desk, move your chair, whatever it is, so that your face is in the middle of the screen and your eye is pretty level with the camera, and try to look at the camera. Clear your background. I have a virtual background, obviously I'm not in the field, but you can definitely use that. And if not, then clear your background so it's not distracting. You know, avoid having a light right in the camera because it kind of, again, messes with the lighting. But if you have clothes, you know, furniture, messiness of any sort, try to get rid of that so it's not distracting and also presents you as more professional. And then your dress is important. You probably won't have to get up from your seat, but just in case, make sure you're wearing pants or, you know, bottoms that will not embarrass you. I suggest, well, we're going to talk about dress later, so I won't spend too much time on this, but do make sure that you dress to make a good first impression. Have a stable surface, not something that will shake, you know, or that might fall. If you have like this tower of books, make sure that it's steady. And try to smile when you're speaking, even when you're on the phone, because this helps lift your voice and your energy level. And I've noticed that virtual communication dulls our energy level by like half, I would say. So you might think you're talking normally, but you might come across as sleepy or drowsy or lazy or uninterested, and you definitely don't want that. So try to smile and pump up your energy a little bit. I actually did some cardio right before this presentation. So if that's just jumping jacks or like have a mini dance party, that really helps, I feel, get your heart rate up so that you're more prepared and you're not just jittery. You know, sometimes when you're nervous, like your hands shake. If you do some movement before this, before the interview, then it might help you clear some of those jittery nerves. And then look at the camera. So I'm not looking at the camera 100% of the time right now, but if I were interviewing, I want to have a pretty steady gaze at the camera. You can see that feels way more connecting, right? When I'm looking at the camera and not down at the screen, down at myself, like off everywhere. So try your best to look right at the camera. And then if you interrupt them, if it's a live interview, as in synchronous, just apologize and move on. Like don't get too awkward about it, because it might be harder to read each other's cues, like when someone else is about to speak. So if you do interrupt each other, you start at the same time. Don't worry, just say, oh, sorry, you go first. You know, just let them go first. Any questions so far about the virtual interview? Or I guess interviews, different formats? No? Okay, let's move on to in-person interviews. So these are 3 representations of the arrangements I talked about earlier. So there's the one-on-one, right? There's a you and panel of interviewers, which is probably the most intimidating. And then there's group interviews, which are not as common. I feel like that might be if they just have so many candidates, like huge volumes, they're hiring like 100 RAs or something, then you might get grouped with other interviewees. So for these in-person interviews, make sure you're dressed professionally and comfortably. So your clothes should be clean, should not have any strong smells. It should fit you, right? Not be too tight or too loose, and preferably with a collar. I just think collars look more professional. I mean, there are ways to look professional without a collar, like this person. She has some simple jewelry, but I think generally collars make you look more professional. And get there early, because you never know if there's traffic, weather, personal snags, right? Xander looks like he has a story to tell. So you can go check your appearance in the bathroom, because I know my hair tends to get like messed up if I'm like in a hurry or if like I'm sweaty and, you know, nervous. Go in the bathroom, dab your face of sweat, and check your appearance. Make sure like there's no stains or wrinkles or fuzz, lint on your body. And then I don't know if handshakes are going to come back after COVID, right? I've been doing the elbow tap. I think that works pretty well. But if you see them reach for a handshake, then go ahead and extend your hand, give a firm handshake. You can sanitize later, wash your hands later. Don't touch your face and maintain pretty good eye contact. So in person, you don't have to like gaze directly at them the whole time, because that's not super comfortable or natural, but try to maintain gaze, like I would say 75–80% of the time, so they know that you're paying attention. And this is in the Western culture. Like I've heard of other countries where that's disrespectful. So, you know, if you're interviewing for outside of the US, or, you know, a company that's based outside of the US, you might want to double check if direct eye contact is respectful or considered rude. And then maintaining an upright posture, that helps both you and the interviewers, because it helps you, first of all, get like the best flow of air, because you're gonna probably like feel short-breathed or nervous. So try to sit up straight, keep your shoulders down, your spine tall. That will help you feel more confident, and that will help them see you as more confident. Beware of over gesturing with your hands. I don't think this is too common, but just wanted to note that sometimes people use their hands too much and it gets distracting. So don't do that too much. Here's another meme. Just my water break. This has never happened to me, but that would be really amusing, don't you think? Okay, so interview dress. This is getting more loose all the time, especially after COVID, right? There's like the work leisure style I'm hearing about. But you want to make a good impression. So don't just try to meet them where they're at. I think it's like if you're overdressed, like you're dressed better than the person interviewing you, that's okay. So here are some examples of, I think, really nice looking professional dress for females, or if you identify as female, then something with a collar, like these all have collars. I think some simple jewelry is nice. You just don't want anything distracting. Like you don't want like too busy of print. Definitely don't want something too revealing, too low in front, too high, up your legs. Like just make sure that it makes you look put together, polished. And also for men, there's a lot of different, styles you can wear. You don't have to wear a tie, but obviously you want to match the industry you're going into. So if you're going into a very serious law office, you probably want to wear a three-piece suit, right? But if you're going into a startup with a lot of like 20-somethings, you can probably get away with wearing just like a nice polo shirt even, but don't wear flip-flops. Don't go too casual. Or if you see them wear shorts, you should not think, oh, I can wear shorts to an interview. Like you still want to make a good first impression. And you can try to find out by looking at their website, see how formal it looks, looking at their social media, like how do the people in those pictures dress, right? And just the industry in general. Any questions about dress? I feel like this is becoming harder to nail because there's no hard rules. Okay. So general interview tips, whether it's virtual or in person. Do not answer unknown numbers. You probably don't already, right? A lot of us don't answer our phones when someone calls, but especially when you're job searching, you're sending in applications, you're waiting for interview invitations. Do not answer your phone if you don't recognize the number, because they might have you do a spontaneous impromptu interview, and that is really putting you at a disadvantage because you haven't prepared your notes. You might not have a quiet room, right? This is usually on the phone, not like Zoom or anything. But if they call you, just let them go to voicemail. If it's an interviewer, they will leave a voicemail. They're not going to like not bring you to an interview if they plan to already. So just check your voicemails. So that's the second part of the rule, is like check your voicemails in case you get an invitation, but don't be caught in an impromptu interview. Yes, question?
Yeah, quickly. So you mentioned, because this actually happened to me pretty recently, I answered a number that I didn't know.
Yeah, it's happened to me too. That's how I learned.
Yeah. So it's better just to let it go to voicemail, and then would you suggest calling them, like listening to the voicemail and being like, oh, this is an interview, we're going to do a phone interview, and then calling them back on your own terms after you've had some time to prepare?
Yeah, and try to call them within the same day, but it doesn't have to be like right away, like 5 minutes later. So my story, this has happened a couple times. I was at work. I answered the phone in the hallway of my office, and nobody knew I was job searching. And I had to go try to find a door that was unlocked and then like go in there. And I think I found like a conference room, and I was so nervous because I wasn't sure if somebody's going to come in and have a meeting. And another time, I think I tried to find like a closet to talk in. So don't do that to yourself. Wait till your lunch break, wait till you go home. They could have it the next day. It's not crucial. It's not an emergency. Great question. Avoid filler words. This is something that we should probably be doing even when we're not interviewing, is to try to cut out filler words that can be very distracting when we're communicating. And there's a lot of different filler words. Yours could be it could be or or right, or like. I think mine are like and So try to notice that in yourself. You can start practicing right now. You can start listening really closely to yourself talking and try to stop before you say a filler word and just say the rest of your message without voicing the filler word. I think there's apps for this as well, but that can be especially distracting in interviews. Remember to breathe. This could be hard to remember. And I think having water, like I have this little picture right here, is a great way to take a break, breathe, moisturize your throat so you don't choke on your own words. I like to have a water bottle with a straw, so I don't have to like tilt. My water bottle is actually in the other room, but if I were interviewing, I would definitely have water bottle with a straw so I can still see the interviewer and drink and not have to like tilt them. And that also, decreases the risk of spilling water on yourself. Have pen and paper to take notes. That's definitely not weird or unprofessional or unusual. I think it shows that you're taking it seriously. And it also helps you to write better thank you notes. If you have better notes of what was said of the interviewers themselves, and it's not going to be too distracting as long as you're not staring at your notes the whole time like you're in class, right? Like you want to give eye contact and just drop small notes, not write down everything. Here's another interview meme.
Linda, there's a question here in the chat. Is there a protocol for Zoom interview dress attire? What do you recommend?
And you can chime in, Michelle. I would say similar to in person, at least for the top part of your body. But I've heard that if you dress professionally top to bottom, wear nice slacks and even shoes at home when you're interviewing on Zoom, it helps you get into the interview mindset and just pull yourself together more rather than like having pajama bottoms on the bottom. Yeah. What do you think, Michelle? Anything to add?
I agree. And then I also would say, think about like your background. So if, for example, you use a virtual background, think about what color you're wearing. Are you going to blend background, brighter colors? Sometimes like neutral colors look better. But yeah, I've heard the same thing. If you dress accordingly, then you'll feel good and you'll, perform. I personally like the option to just wear a top up, dress up.
I do too.
I think as in person.
Yeah. And full transparency, when I interviewed for this job, I was like, I really want this job. I'm going to wear slacks and heels, like my Zoom interviews. And it worked, apparently, because here I am.
Right.
But if I were interviewing on Zoom, I would definitely not wear a shirt this busy because I don't want it to distract. And sometimes you want to practice your background so that it doesn't make your head or your hair look weird, right? Some backgrounds like cut out your hair or make you look fuzzy. So just watch out for that. Test it beforehand. Okay, so this is probably the most intense part of your preparation. I would dedicate like proportionate time to how much you want the job. So if you really want this job, 4 to 5 hours, I would say, is not unheard of or not too much, right? And if you're like preparing for multiple jobs at the same time, then you might have to cut down to like 1 or 2 hours prep for each job, but definitely put in the time because it will pay off, quality over quantity. And this is not for the first interview, right? So we talked about the screening interview, that's just like 10 minutes. They usually ask you basic questions like, tell us about yourself, which you'll ask in any interview. They'll always start that. And then why do you want this job? Why are you qualified for this job? And maybe a couple other ones for screening interviews. But if you get past that first level, they're going to get more in depth. They want to spend more time with you. And that's a really good sign. So to prepare for that, I would say, going from left to right, review the job description, right? That's your biggest clue to what they want in a candidate. So get to know what they want inside out. I like to copy and paste the job description onto a Word document and highlight all the parts, and you can print it out if you want, highlight all the parts that I have experience in and write little notes to remind myself of examples. So if they want somebody with supervising experience, I'll write down, okay, that time when I supervised 10 volunteers. If they want somebody with leadership experience, okay, that one time when I had to lead a group project, blah, blah, blah. So, just like notes for yourself. And then your resume and cover letter, because they might refer to it directly and say, oh, I see that you've done this. Can you tell me about this? And if you blank, that looks really bad. So you can even have it in front of you. When when you're, I mean, virtually for sure you can have notes, but don't like try not to have too many so you're not like ruffling papers all the time. But in person, I would say it's okay to have like 3 sheets in front of you. I've seen that, and it's not too distracting. But make sure you know what you wrote. So if they refer to it, you don't get caught off guard. And then research the organization and the interviewers. I like to look them up on LinkedIn just to get an idea, like how long have they worked at this company? What's their background? Do I have anything in common with them that I could bring up in the interview? And then the organization, I would look on their website for sure, their About Us page, right? Their mission, services, and then also on Wikipedia, because Wikipedia has things like how many employees they have, when were they founded, if there's any newsworthy things that are not on their website. Because their website is like self-promoting, and then Wikipedia is a little bit more objective, has more history on it. I love to learn about that context. And then practicing, this is where you need to practice talking, because we have a lot of information in our heads and we think, okay, we got it, it's all up here, right? But I've worked with tons of students and clients in my own career coaching business where people are surprised by how not smooth their communication is verbally. So even if it's in your head, even if you've written out notes, practice talking it out, like to yourself, to a roommate, to a family member, to us, right? Career Services is here to help. I love helping students prep for interviews. Michelle does this too. All of us in Career Services who meet with students, it's one of the options for appointments. So don't be afraid to just make an appointment, and we'll help you practice it as many times as you need to. Practice your self intros. That's the answer to the question or the prompt. Tell us about yourself, right? You want to know how much to share, not too much, not too little. And that takes a lot of tries. So don't feel weird about it. You don't do it too often. So, we all need practice there. And then practice talking about why you're interested in the job, specifically, not just you need a job. And then your qualifications, like what are your strengths? What experiences and skills do you have that can make you the best, the obvious candidate for the choice? So you don't want to just say, I check these boxes. I mean, that's like the bare minimum, but why should they hire you above everybody else? Okay, so try to prepare those kind of answers. Star stories, I'll get to that real quick. And then behavioral questions, I'll get to that as well. And then preparing, so taking care of your body, because your body is your instrument in interviews. So get enough rest, get a good night's sleep beforehand, make sure you eat a good breakfast so you're not starving, you're not distracted by a rumbling stomach, right? And have water in front of you. I prefer having something with a straw, but you don't have to. And then notes, we talked about that, and questions for the interviewer. So you want to have 3 to 5 questions prepared based on your research, based on what you found about the job, company, and your goal is to show them how dedicated you are already to the job. So you don't want to ask questions that are self-serving, like how many vacation days do I get? Or can I get a raise at the end of the year? Or, things that are about you. Like you're not at the negotiating stage yet. That's at the very end. So just ask questions about the job, the company, how to do your best. And you can look up questions online, there's lots. And this is probably my favorite meme. Don't be that person. It's so awkward. Okay, behavioral questions. This just means questions that they ask to learn about your previous behavior to try to predict your future behavior. Because they don't know you, right? All they can go on is what you tell them. And you want to tell them very specific, concrete things to help them feel more certain about investing in you. Because any person who gets hired is a risk for the employer. The employer is taking a risk whenever they hire someone because they don't know how exactly they're going to perform, right? They have clues like the resume and the interview and cover letter and the various things you send them, but they don't really know. So they're trying to figure out like, how is this person going to perform the job? So they might ask all sorts of questions like, tell us about a time you did this. Tell us about a time you did this. Do you have experience doing this? How would you act in this situation? So they're trying to figure out your behavior. And the best way is the STAR method. You might have heard of this. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And it's just a framework to help you prepare your answers the best you can. You never know what they're going to throw at you, but I would say prepare several STAR stories, maybe like 4 to 5, and write them down. I type it out, and then I practice talking through it. So here's one example, the situation. So you just describe the situation, and you don't have to say like the situation is, the task is, the action is, the result, just like tell like a story. So I'm the VP of the Black Student Union, and we meet weekly to plan events. We needed to organize, a performance with the 12 other identity-based student organizations on campus. So I coordinated Zoom calls with the other presidencies to plan the program, rehearsals, costumes, and music. And the result was it became our most attended performance in the past 5 years, even during COVID. So obviously you want to find your success stories, the highlights from your experience to put yourself in the best light. And STAR stories are great because they can answer all sorts of different questions. So this STAR story can answer a question like, tell us about a time you led a team, or tell us about a time you had to pivot during COVID to, do something that you're not used to, or tell us about a time you had to work with others who disagreed with you. This could answer different questions. So I would have several prepared so you can use whatever you need. Here's another meme. When they ask about your weakness, it's not like, what do you love, right? They're trying to figure out, first of all, how self-aware you are, right? We all have weaknesses, we all have faults. So saying you don't have a weakness is not realistic, and it's okay to have weaknesses, like we all do. They want to see how honest you are, and also how much you can improve yourself. So working on constant self-improvement is really important part of being any kind of professional. And here is my outline for how to answer weakness questions, which they might word as, tell us about a challenge you have, or tell us about a negative feedback you got from a supervisor, or what is a disadvantage you have at work. They might not say, what's your greatest weakness, even though that's the most straightforward way. But how you can answer is describe a chronic struggle that you've been having. So mine, I'll just be transparent, is being on time. And that's something that's affected me my whole life. And describe how it's affected you. So I think it hurts my brand. I think it shows that I might be disrespectful to others if I show up late, and that I don't take my job as seriously as I really do. So then describe how you are working to improve it. So this is the most important part. Spend the most time describing your efforts on how you're working on it. So I have tried showing up early, like really paying attention to my notifications. And one reason that I've learned that I am late is because I get bored. I don't like to show up early and wait for everyone. So I always have a book with me, or I get a coworker to go with me to a meeting, like, hey, let's walk together, find someone who's usually early or on time. So lots of different things that I'm trying to do to improve this chronic struggle, this weakness that I have. And then describe the positive results of your efforts. What difference has this made in your life, right? So before, where, maybe 2 years ago, I was late like 50% of the time. Now I'm only late 20% of the time, which is an improvement. Not perfect, but it's definitely better than before. It's a funny question. Don't be snarky, as tempting as it might be, but you definitely want to have questions for the interviewer, and also have some idea of where you want to be in 5, 10 years. They might ask you that because that is a question to gauge how long you might stay at the company. So if your goal in 5 years is to become, I don't know, a news anchor, and this job is to work at a fast food place, like you want to describe how this job is going to help you get there. But if it's a job that they expect you to stay a while, like, let's say you're interviewing for a paralegal position, and they're like, oh, what's your, career goal in 5 years? And they're expecting you to say something in law, like, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a judge or something. And you say, I would love to be a manager at Disneyland. Then they know that this is like totally off from what you really want to do. And, that might make them a little nervous. So do try to apply to jobs that you really are interested in, but also have some kind of intelligent answer to help them feel more secure in hiring you. When you're preparing questions, I would say 3 to 5 questions, because sometimes your questions get answered during the interview, so you don't need to ask it at the end. And do your research and be specific. There's lots of ideas on the internet that you can borrow, but try to tailor it to the job. Like if there's any part of the job description that you don't understand or that you just want to learn more about. So for example, if they require Photoshop, or they require some kind of special skill, and you can ask something like, what kind of projects will be using this skill? Or what can I expect to gain in terms of training to continually improve this skill? Those kind of questions they love, because it shows that you want to do your best at the job. Or how will I know if I'm being successful? How will feedback be delivered? There's so many, so I'm not going to like tell you anymore, because you can just look those up, and they should be specific to the job. Talk about this, focus on serving them, not how it's going to benefit you. And you can also use your questions to reinforce why you're the best person for the job. So I've heard of a question where you can ask, are there any hesitations you have about hiring me? Are there any reservations you have about my application that you haven't already addressed? And if they say something like, well, and usually I feel like they usually answer about like experience, like, we feel like, you don't have the most experience in this area, then you can respond to their response by saying, I understand your concern. Although I'm a very enthusiastic learner, I ask questions when I don't understand. I'm a self-starter. I am good at being resourceful, and I know I can learn quickly and catch up. So you can use these kind of questions to make yourself look even better, basically. Okay, wrapping up. We've talked a lot about how to prepare for like the physical parts, right? Like, what do you wear? Where do you interview? How to answer certain questions. But a big part of interviewing is your mindset, like your attitude towards the process. And it's really easy to get super nervous and anxious because you're afraid of rejection, you're afraid of failure, you're afraid of disappointment, of not getting a job that you've been really wanting, since your freshman year. So here are some tips, is to really adjust your mindset, because how you think affects how you feel, right? Your thoughts influence your emotions, and your emotions influence your actions. And if you are thinking really anxiety-inducing thoughts, then your actions will reflect that, like lack of confidence, lack of preparation. So here's some tips. Focus on power. And what I mean by that is they don't have 100% of the power. You also have the power to not take the job, to reject the next interview if you're not interested, right? So they don't hold all the cards. They don't have complete control over your future. If you decide that they're not a good fit, you also have equal power to not continue the process, just as they do for not inviting you to the next interview. So remember that you have equal power. Remember that, or try to focus on service. I think obviously for some jobs, it's easier to focus on service than others. But anytime you're taking a job, you are giving of your talents, your skills, your experience, your passion, your strengths to make somebody's life better in some way, whether it's providing a service like being a nurse, right? Or it's providing a good like computers or software or anything that you build. You're doing something that will make the world or other people's lives better and easier. So focus on serving and giving, because that always brings warm fuzzies, I find. And focus on curiosity. you're trying to learn about the company. So the interview is a two-way interview. Even though they're asking most of the questions, you still get to ask questions at the end. You get to observe the interviewers. Do they seem happy about working at this company? Do they seem interested in you? Do they seem like they'll be easy to work with? Are they tense? Are they rude? Are they compassionate? You can really open your eyes and try to understand what this company and this job is all about. Focus on authenticity, meaning being yourself. I've heard from a lot of interviewers that they are so tired of people saying what they want, what they think they want to hear. They want to get to know the person, like the personality of the person. What are they like naturally, day to day? What kind of traits do they have? What kind of sense of humor do they have? And how do they work with others? So don't be afraid to be yourself, though, of course, be your best self, not like your super casual, laid back, hangout self, but your best professional self. And then focus on your strengths. Everybody has weaknesses and everybody has strengths, but you want to don't apologize for things that you don't have or that you can't do yet. Just focus on what you can do and how you're going to work on improving yourself. Focus on your passion. There's some level of interest you have in the job, right? Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be spending all this time interviewing, preparing for it. So focus on what you're really interested in, fascinated by. I've always wanted to learn more about zebras, and I'm excited to work at this lab where I could study animals in Africa. Whatever it is that draws you to that position, allow that excitement to come through. That'll make you less scared and nervous. And lastly, focus on gratitude. Interviewing takes a lot of time, and because there's a lot of stuff behind interviewing, right? It's not just the time you're spending with the person. They spend time looking through tons of applications and scheduling interviews, reviewing interviews like on HireVue that are recorded. So by the time they get to you in person, there's a lot of investment already. And same with you. You've spent time reviewing your resume, writing a cover letter, preparing your notes, researching the company. So by the time both of you are coming together, you and the interviewers, then you've already put a lot of time and effort into it. So be grateful for their investment, be grateful for the opportunity, because the pool of people who get interviewed is very small compared to the pool of people who apply. So if you get an interview, be grateful rather than be nervous. Here's another meme. We all have regrets sometimes in interviewing. So don't fret about it. It's out of your control. It's in the past. Just leave it behind. However, you do have one more chance to make a good impression, which is in thank you notes. So always write a thank you note. I think it's best to do it within the day, right? I do it as soon as I get home, because you're still fresh in their mind. They're still fresh in your mind. You can review your notes. Send a separate email to each interviewer so you can personalize it, even if you write the same thing, but I try to add something unique to each of them. So if I hear, one of them's going on vacation soon, or one of them just got back from vacation, one of them is from my home state, one of them is going to run a marathon, I just try to add something to make them feel like I paid attention, I care about them. Thank them for their time, always, the thank you note. So focus on being grateful. And then if you have, if you have any questions, you can ask, but I would also reiterate your interest, because sometimes after your interview, you don't want the job anymore. And that's okay. But if you want the job still, say that you're still interested and just give a quick review of why you're the best candidate. Last impressions count too. Okay, having lots of interviews is not a bad thing, right? Every interview you go to is good practice for the future. So count that as another notch on your belt, and don't feel bad if you don't get, the first job you interview for, because that's not the norm. All right, so wrapping up, if you get a job offer, thank them with enthusiasm, but ask for time. Even if you're like, oh, I'm so happy, I definitely want this job, ask for at least a day to consider. And if you're not sure, ask for up to a week. I would say no longer than a week, because they they want to hire someone to do the job. So ask for some time because you want to review the contract, the offer letter. What they have in writing is what's going to be the binding contract. Even if, because sometimes in the interview, they'll say things that make the company look extra good because they really need to hire people, but then like in the contract, it's not as good as they might say. And, that could happen, unfortunately, but just make sure you know what you're going into. Consider the salary and the benefits. So not just how much you're getting paid, but vacation days, sick days, health insurance, retirement. Do you have any flexibility working from home? Do you get a company phone if you're expected to be on call? Do you, have access to like counselors? Sometimes companies have like really amazing benefits like debt forgiveness, or if they'll pay for grad school in 2 years. Check out all the benefits and ask questions, negotiate if you want, if you don't feel like it's a fair trade for your labor. And then if you don't get the offer, thank them anyway. Always be grateful because again, remember they spend a lot of time reviewing your application, and ask for feedback. So I would ask each individual, if there's multiple interviewers, and just be honest and say, I'm disappointed I didn't get the job, although I'm really still interested in the company. I will continue applying for similar positions and I want to do better. So I would appreciate any feedback you have for me on how to improve my future interviews. Right? And I've gotten some really good feedback there. If you still want to work for them, ask them to keep you in mind. A lot of times they'll say, we'll keep your resume on file, but you might also want to follow up with them on LinkedIn. I add all my interviewers on LinkedIn because you never know if another position will open up, if they liked you, but their colleagues didn't like you, right? So you didn't get the majority vote. That's happened to me before. But I've had people reach out to me like a few months later and say, hey, we have another position open. We think you should apply. We think you'd be a good fit for this one, even though you didn't get the other one. So don't give up on that company. Okay, so lastly, here are 3 articles that I've written to help you prepare for interviews. And it kind of wraps up everything we've talked about. This one is like how to prepare. This one's like the mindset, all those things focus on so you don't get nervous. And then how to answer the weakness question. So I can share the slides. That would be helpful. Michelle, I don't know if you'll share the slides and we'll read those later. Lastly, here's my email if you have any questions. But I'm just over the STEM and health students. So whatever your major is, just reach out to Career Services, make an appointment. We'll be happy to help you prepare for interviews.